If I stop seeing you, you'll forget me within weeks, she whispered. No, he said softly, his accent heavy with pain. When a man like me finally finds peace, he never forgets where he found it. The blood on her hand was still warm when he reached across the table and took her wrist. Not rough, not demanding, just careful, like she was something precious he didn't know how to hold without breaking. In that moment, everything I thought I knew about power shifted. Because real power isn't about fear. It's about the choice to be gentle when you could destroy everything. Let me take you back to where it started. Not to the beginning, but to the moment everything changed. The moment a man who controlled half of Manhattan's shadows learned that some things can't be bought, threatened, or commanded into existence. Her name was Zara Coleman, and if you passed her on the street, you wouldn't look twice. That's how she wanted it. 26 years old, bruises hidden under long sleeves, tips hidden in her shoe because going home meant her stepfather would find them. She worked at La Scala Rosa, the kind of restaurant where conversations happened in whispers and everyone knew not to ask questions about the men in corner booths. 3 years she'd been there. 3 years of keeping her head down, moving like smoke between tables, existing without being seen. But you can't hide forever. Not when someone is really watching. Have you ever felt someone's eyes on you and known, instantly, that your life was about to change? Drop a comment below and let me know your story. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Table 7. Always Table 7. Every Thursday at 9:45, like clockwork, the door would open and Marcus Dante would walk in. 6'3", shoulders that filled doorways, hands that could snap bones but somehow always held his wine glass like it might shatter. They called him the Quiet King. Not because he was silent, but because when he spoke, people listened or they disappeared. Nobody knew much about him. Just whispers. That he'd come from nothing in Brooklyn, built an empire before 30, and buried his wife under circumstances the police called inconclusive. That was 7 years ago. Since then, he'd been a ghost in a designer suit, moving through the world like he was looking for something he'd lost and couldn't name. Zara never looked at him directly. Never asked what he wanted beyond his order. Grilled sea bass, no sides, black coffee. Same thing every week. She'd set the plate down, he'd nod, she'd disappear. That's how it went for 2 months. Until the night her hands were shaking too hard and the wine glass slipped. It shattered across the white tablecloth like frozen rain, and before she could move, before she could apologize, a shard bit into her palm. Deep enough that blood pooled instantly, dripping between her fingers onto the floor. I'm so sorry. I'll clean this up. I'll... Stop. His voice cut through her panic like a blade. Not angry. Worse than angry. Concerned. He stood up. Marcus Dante, the man who made grown men cry in back rooms, stood up from his table for a waitress. He took her wrist before she could pull away, before she could run to the kitchen and hide like she always did. His grip was firm, but his thumb traced the edge of her wound with something that felt impossible. Tenderness. You shouldn't bleed for anyone in this place, he said, and his eyes met hers for the first time. Dark brown. Exhausted. Carrying weight she recognized because she saw it every morning in her mirror. That's when the manager rushed over, apologizing, offering to comp his meal, practically throwing Zara under the bus to save face. But Marcus didn't look at him, didn't acknowledge him. He wrapped his handkerchief around her hand, white silk turning crimson, and said quietly, "Get her a first aid kit. Now." The manager scurried away. Zara stood there, frozen, feeling the warmth of his hand around hers, smelling cedar and expensive whiskey, and thinking this man could kill me and no one would ask questions. Instead, he said, "What's your name?" "Zara." "Zara." He repeated it like he was memorizing it, like it mattered. "You work too hard for people who don't see you." Then he sat back down, released her hand, and went back to his meal like nothing happened. But something had happened. Something neither of them could take back. That night, after her shift, his driver was waiting outside. The black Mercedes idled at the curb like a predator catching its breath. Rain had started falling, turning the sidewalk into a mirror of neon signs and brake lights. Zara pulled her coat tighter, head down, ready to walk past it the way she walked past everything that wasn't her business. Then the window rolled down. Miss Coleman. The driver was older, gray at the temples, the kind of man who'd seen things he'd never speak about. Mr. Dante requests your presence. Her stomach dropped. This was how it happened in movies. Girl gets in the car, girl disappears. But the rain was cold, and her hand was throbbing, and something in her wanted to know what happens when you stop running. I should go home. He's not that kind of man. The driver's voice was softer now, almost fatherly.
He just wants to talk.
20 minutes. I'll have you back wherever you need to be. She should have said no. Should have walked away. But when you've spent your whole life invisible, being seen feels like oxygen after drowning. She got in. The car smelled like leather and rain and possibility. They drove through the city in silence, past her neighborhood, past the point where she could pretend this was normal. They pulled up to a building in Tribeca, the kind with doormen who don't smile and elevators that open directly into penthouses. Marcus was standing by the window when she walked in, still in his suit, tie loosened, looking out at Manhattan like he owned every light. Maybe he did. You came, he said without turning around. You made it hard to say no. Now he looked at her, and something like a smile touched his face. Not quite there, but close. I'm told I have that effect.
Sit.
Please. The apartment was beautiful in a way that hurt. Everything perfect, everything expensive, everything cold. No photos on the walls. No signs anyone actually lived here. Just space and silence, and a man who looked like he was haunting his own life. He'd ordered food. Real food. Not restaurant scraps or bodega sandwiches, but the kind of meal she hadn't eaten since before her mother died. Roasted chicken, vegetables that still had flavor, bread that was warm. I'm not hungry, she lied. Yes, you are. He pulled out a chair at the dining table. And before you ask, no, there's nothing expected. No games. I wanted to apologize for what happened tonight. You got hurt in my presence. That bothers me. She sat slowly, watching him, waiting for the trap. Men like you don't apologize. Men like me rarely have reason to. He sat across from her, didn't touch his own plate. Just watched her with those tired eyes. You're afraid of me. I'm afraid of everyone. Something flickered across his face. Recognition, maybe. Yeah, he said quietly. I know that feeling. They sat in silence while she ate, and it wasn't uncomfortable. It was strange. Like two people drowning in different oceans finding out they could hear each other underwater. He didn't ask invasive questions.
Didn't demand her story.
He just existed in the same space, and somehow that felt more dangerous than any threat. Why me? She finally asked. Why pull me aside? Why bring me here? Marcus leaned back in his chair, considering. When he spoke, his voice carried weight she couldn't quite measure. Because when you dropped that glass, you flinched before it broke. Like you've been hit for smaller mistakes. And I know what it looks like when someone's running from something they can't escape. The food turned to ash in her mouth. He continued, gentle now, terrifying in his gentleness. I'm not asking you to tell me. I'm not asking you for anything. But if you need help, I don't need saving. The words came out sharper than she intended. I'm fine. Okay. He didn't push. Didn't interrogate. Just nodded like he understood that sometimes the hardest part of drowning is admitting you can't swim. Then just finish your meal. My driver will take you wherever you want to go.
No strings.
But there were strings. There were always strings. She could feel them wrapping around her ribs, pulling tight, and she didn't know if she wanted to cut them or hold on. She stood up, ready to leave, ready to run back to her small apartment and pretend this never happened. But at the door, she turned back. Why do you eat alone every Thursday? He didn't answer right away. When he did, it sounded like confession. Because Thursday was the day she died. And eating alone is easier than remembering what it's like to have company. Zara left without another word, but that night she dreamed of a man in a corner booth who looked at her like she was the first person he'd seen in years. And when she woke up, there was a knock at her door. A package. No return address. Inside was a first aid kit. Expensive. Professional grade. And a note in handwriting that looked like it hurt to write. In case you bleed again. The next Thursday, she worked his table, and when she set down his coffee, their eyes met and something unspoken passed between them. 2 weeks later, her stepfather's gambling debts came due, and the men who came to collect didn't take no for an answer. The eviction notice was taped to her door like a death sentence. 72 hours. 3 days to come up with money she didn't have for debts she didn't know. Her stepfather had disappeared 2 weeks ago, left her holding the bag, and now men with dead eyes were asking questions about her work schedule, her route home, her patterns. She knew what came next. She'd seen it happen to other girls in her neighborhood. First the threats, then the offers, then the choices that weren't really choices at all. Thursday came, and she almost called in sick. Almost stayed home and waited for the inevitable. But rent was rent and tips were tips, and maybe if she could just make it through one more shift, she could figure something out. Marcus noticed immediately. "You're shaking," he said when she poured his water. "Not a question. A fact."
Ai fine.
"You're a terrible liar." He set down his menu, gave her his full attention in a way that made her feel transparent. "What happened?" "Nothing I can't handle." But her voice cracked on the last word, betrayed her. He was quiet for a long moment, studying her face like he could read the whole story in the shadows under her eyes. Then he did something she didn't expect. He asked everyone at the surrounding tables to leave. Didn't threaten them.
Didn't need to.
Just looked at them and they understood. Within 2 minutes, their section was empty except for her and him, and the truth hanging between them like smoke. "Sit down. I'll get fired. I own 20% of this restaurant. Sit down." She sat. Her legs wouldn't hold her anyway. And then, because there was no point in lying to a man who probably already knew, she told him. About her stepfather.
About the debts.
About the men who came to her apartment with suggestions that made her skin crawl. About the eviction and the fear, and the feeling of walls closing in. Marcus listened without interrupting, his face carved from stone except for his eyes, which darkened with each detail. When she finished, he was silent for so long she thought maybe she'd made a mistake. Maybe he didn't care. Maybe he was just a man who'd wanted to play hero for an evening and now regretted getting involved. Then he said, "How much?"
What?
"How much do you owe?" She laughed. It came out bitter. $37,000. Might as well be $1 million. I've got 600 in savings. He pulled out his phone, made a call, spoke in Italian too fast for her to follow. Hung up. Looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. "It's handled." Her brain stuttered. "What's handled?"
The debt.
"It's paid. Your stepfather's creditors will receive payment by morning, with clear documentation that you hold no liability for his obligations. The eviction will be reversed. You're free." The world tilted sideways. I can't accept that. I can't pay you back." "I'm not asking you to." He leaned forward, and his voice dropped to something that felt like intimacy. "But I am asking for something." There it was. The trap. The catch. The moment where kindness revealed its cost. Her chest tightened. "What do you want?"
Dinner.
"Here. With me. Once a week. Thursday nights. Just company. Conversation. Nothing more. No obligations beyond showing up." He paused, and something vulnerable crossed his face. "I'm tired of eating alone, Zara. And you're the first person in 7 years who doesn't look at me like I'm a monster." It was the stupidest deal she'd ever heard. Dinner for $37,000. Conversation for freedom. And yet, looking at him, at this man who could buy countries but couldn't buy peace, she understood. Loneliness recognized loneliness. Pain knew pain. Just dinner? Just dinner. If you're ever uncomfortable, you walk away.
No consequences. No debts.
She should have known better. Should have known that men like him don't give without taking. But the thing about drowning is eventually you'll grab onto anything that floats, even if it might pull you under later. "Okay. Something like relief washed over his face. Okay. That night, after her shift, he walked her out himself. No driver.
No guards.
Just him in his expensive coat, walking beside her through rain-soaked streets like a normal person. At her building's entrance, he stopped. You'll be safe now, he said. I've made sure of it. Why are you helping me? He looked at her for a long moment, rain catching in his dark hair, and she realized he was probably only a few years older than her. 32, maybe 33. But he carried decades in his eyes. Because someone should have helped me once. And didn't. He turned to leave, then paused. Thursday, 8 o'clock. I'll make reservations. She watched him disappear into the night, and something in her chest that had been clenched tight for years loosened just slightly. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe this was the beginning of something she couldn't control. But for the first time in forever, she wasn't afraid. 3 days later, she showed up for their dinner, and he smiled when he saw her.
A real smile this time.
And they talked about books and childhood and all the small things that make up a life. He didn't ask about her pain. She didn't ask about his empire. They just existed together, two broken people pretending to be whole. It was perfect. It was dangerous. And outside, in the shadows between streetlights, someone was taking pictures. The dinners became a ritual. Every Thursday at 8, she'd finish her shift and find him waiting at table 7, 2 place settings instead of 1. They never ran out of things to say. He told her about growing up in Brooklyn with nothing, watching his mother work 3 jobs, learning that survival meant being harder than everyone trying to break you. She told him about her mother's laugh, about dreams of college before the money ran out, about the feeling of being invisible in a world that only sees you when it wants something. The restaurant staff stopped whispering after the 3rd week. Marcus left tips that covered their mortgage payments, and suddenly Zara became someone worth respecting. The manager who'd thrown her under the bus now smiled when she walked in. Funny how money changes manners. But Marcus didn't change. Didn't try to touch her beyond a hand on her back when opening doors. Didn't press for more than conversation. He was patient in a way that felt unnatural for a man used to taking what he wanted. Like he was relearning how to be human, one careful moment at a time. Tell me something you've never told anyone, he said one night over dessert. She looked at him across candlelight, this man who'd become both stranger and familiar in equal measure. I used to think I'd die without anyone noticing. Just another statistic. Another girl who disappeared into the cracks. His jaw tightened. And now I'm not sure what I think. You make me feel like maybe I matter. And that's terrifying. Why terrifying? Because mattering means having something to lose. He was quiet, turning his wine glass in slow circles. When he spoke, his voice was rough. I had everything once. A wife who laughed at my terrible jokes. A future that looked like maybe I could be more than what I came from. Then she got caught in the crossfire of my choices, and I learned that love makes you vulnerable in ways that can destroy you. Is that why you're alone? That's why I was alone. Past tense. He looked at her, and the weight of his attention was physical. Zara, I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear it clearly. The men I deal with, the world I move in, it's not safe. Being close to me puts a target on your back. If we continue these dinners, if this becomes more than an arrangement, you need to understand the risk. Are you trying to scare me away? I'm trying to be honest. Because I'm starting to care about you, and caring about you means wanting to protect you, even if that means from myself. Her heart was doing something complicated in her chest. This man, this dangerous, powerful man, was giving her an out, warning her, offering her the choice to walk away before things got deeper. But here's the thing about people who've lived in darkness. They're drawn to any light they find, even if it might burn them. What if I don't want to walk away? Something changed in his expression. Hope, maybe, or fear that looked like hope. Then we go slow, careful, and the moment you want out, you tell me. Promise me that. I promise. He reached across the table, took her hand, and the touch sent electricity through her bones. Not aggressive, not demanding, just connection. Human warmth after years of cold. That night, he asked if he could drive her home. Not his driver. Him. In his personal car, which turned out to be a modest sedan instead of the flashy vehicles she'd expected. They talked about music and favorite foods and stupid movies they'd seen too many times. Normal things. Like they were normal people on a normal date. At her building, he walked her to the door. "Can I see you outside of Thursday?" he asked, and he sounded almost nervous. Marcus Dante nervous. "Maybe coffee this weekend? Something casual." "I'd like that." He smiled, genuine and unguarded, and she realized how rarely he let anyone see this version of him. The man beneath the armor. Then he did something that made her breath catch. He kissed her forehead. Gentle, reverent. Like she was something holy he was afraid to break. "Good night, Zara." "Good night, Marcus." She floated upstairs, feeling like maybe, just maybe, good things could happen to people like her. Maybe survival wasn't the best she could hope for. Maybe there was more. She didn't see the car parked across the street. Didn't notice the telephoto lens capturing the moment Marcus kissed her forehead. Didn't know that by morning, those photos would be on someone's desk, being studied by eyes that saw her as weakness and weakness as opportunity. The storm was coming, and neither of them knew how to prepare for what came next. 3 days later, Marcus texted her. "Change of plans for coffee. Come to my place instead. I'll cook." She should have been suspicious. Should have questioned. But she was 26 and lonely and falling for someone who saw her as more than a ghost. So she said yes. She had no idea that decision would almost cost her everything. His penthouse looked different in daylight. Less like a museum, more like a place where someone actually lived. There were books now, stacked on the coffee table. A blanket draped over the couch. Small signs that he was trying to make space for something other than emptiness. Marcus was in the kitchen when she arrived, and seeing him in a simple black t-shirt and jeans instead of his usual suit felt intimate in a way that made her nervous. He looked younger. More human. Less like the man people whispered about in fear. "You cook?" she asked, setting down her bag. "I'm Italian. It's in my blood, even if I grew up in Brooklyn." He smiled, stirring something that smelled incredible. "My mother made sure I knew my way around a kitchen," said a man who can't feed himself can't take care of anyone else. They fell into easy conversation while he cooked, her perched on a bar stool, him moving around the kitchen with surprising grace. He told her stories about his mother, about learning to make marinara from scratch at 8 years old, about the neighborhood where everyone knew everyone's business and protected their own. "That's where I met Dominic," he said, his voice quieter now. "My consigliera. My right hand. We grew up on the same block. His family had nothing, mine had less. We made a pact when we were 16. We'd get out together or not at all. Did you?" "In a way. Though getting out just meant learning to navigate different kinds of danger." He plated the pasta, brought it to the dining table. "But I trust him with my life. With everything." They ate and talked, and somewhere between the second glass of wine and the story about her high school English teacher who believed in her when no one else did, his hand found hers across the table. Their fingers interlaced, and neither of them pulled away. "Zara," he said, his voice low. "I know I said we'd go slow, but I need you to know, this isn't casual for me. You've become something I didn't think I'd feel again." Her heart hammered. "What's that?"
Hope.
"The belief that maybe I can be more than what I've had to become." She stood up, walked around the table, and before she could second-guess herself, she kissed him. It started soft, tentative, two people learning each other's shapes. Then his hands were in her hair, and her back was against the wall, and everything else disappeared except the feeling of being wanted, being seen, being more than just a ghost passing through someone's life. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "Stay," he whispered.
Please. Just to talk. To sleep beside someone.
"I'm not asking for anything else. I don't want to be alone tonight." And she did. She stayed. They lay in his bed, fully clothed, her head on his chest, his arms around her, and talked until their voices got heavy with sleep. about fear and hope and all the ways people try to heal from things that should have broken them. You make me feel safe, she murmured, half asleep. You make me feel human, he replied. She didn't know exactly when she fell asleep, but she woke to the sound of his phone ringing. Marcus answered it quietly, trying not to wake her, but she felt him tense. Heard the change in his voice. When?
Pause.
How many? Another pause. Don't do anything. I'm coming. He hung up, carefully extracted himself from the bed. She sat up. What's wrong?
His face had changed.
The gentle man from last night was gone, replaced by someone colder, harder. The version of him that people feared. I need to handle something. Dominic will drive you home. Marcus. It's nothing you need to worry about. But his eyes said otherwise. His eyes said everything. She got dressed quickly, and he walked her to the door where Dominic was waiting. Older Italian man, kind eyes that didn't match the gun bulge under his jacket. Take care of her, Marcus said, and it sounded like an order. Always, boss. In the car, Zara tried to ask what was happening, but Dominic just smiled gently. Mr. Dante handles business. That's all. You'll see him Thursday. But she didn't feel reassured. She felt like something had shifted, like a door had opened that couldn't be closed. And as they drove through Manhattan, she noticed something she'd missed before. Another car was following them. Dominic noticed too.
His jaw tightened.
He made a call, spoke rapid Italian, then changed routes. But the car stayed with them, keeping distance but never disappearing. Miss Coleman, Dominic said, his voice still gentle but edged with something sharp. I need you to stay calm. We're just going to take a different route. Who's following us? I don't know yet, but I'm going to keep you safe. That's my job. They wound through side streets, and Zara's heart was in her throat. This was the world Marcus had warned her about, the danger that came with being close to him. And she'd ignored the warning because she was falling for him, and love made you stupid. Finally, they pulled up to her building. Dominic got out first, checked the street, then opened her door. Go straight inside. Lock everything. Don't answer the door unless it's me or Mr. Dante. Understand? She nodded, mouth dry. She made it to her apartment, locked the door, and for the first time all day, she let herself feel the fear. The realization that she'd stepped into something bigger than romance, something that could swallow her whole. Her phone buzzed. Marcus, are you safe?
Yes.
What's happening? I'll explain Thursday.
I'm sorry.
But Thursday didn't come. Because that night, as she was getting ready for bed, her door burst open. Two men, faces covered, grabbed her before she could scream. A cloth over her mouth, chemical smell, and then nothing. When she woke up, she was in a warehouse, hands zip-tied, head pounding. And across from her, tied to a chair, blood dripping from a cut on his head, was Dominic. A voice came from the shadows. Accented. Italian. Amused. So this is the girl who made Marcus Dante weak. Let's see if she's worth dying for. What happens next will make you question everything you thought you knew about power, revenge, and the price of being seen. Have you ever been in a situation where caring about someone put you in danger? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your stories matter. The man who stepped from the shadows wore an expensive suit and a smile that made my blood freeze. Late 40s, graying at the temples, the kind of face that probably looked trustworthy in boardrooms. But his eyes were empty. Dead things pretending to be alive. My name is Luciano Ferrani, he said, circling me like I was merchandise. And you, Miss Coleman, have become a very expensive problem. Dominic tried to speak through his split lip. You touch her, Marcus will burn your entire organization to ash. Luciano laughed. Actually laughed. That's exactly what I'm counting on. You see, when Marcus Dante goes to war, he gets sloppy. Emotional. And emotional men make mistakes. Fatal ones. My wrists burned against the zip ties. The warehouse was cold, metal and concrete, and the smell of old oil.
No windows.
No way to know if it was day or night. How long had I been unconscious? What do you want? My voice came out steadier than I felt. Smart girl. Asking the right questions. He pulled up a chair, sat down like we were having coffee instead of him holding us hostage. I want what Marcus has. His territory. His connections. His respect. But mostly, I want revenge for what he did to my sister. His wife, Dominic said quietly.
Vittoria.
Something ugly crossed Luciano's face. She married him to unite our families. A business arrangement. But Marcus actually fell in love with her. Made her soft. Made her believe in fairy tales. And when our enemies came for her, his love got her killed. That's not what happened, Dominic growled. You sold her out. You made a deal with the Russians, and when it went bad, you let her take the fall. The slap came fast. Luciano backhanded Dominic hard enough that blood sprayed. Careful, old friend. You're only alive because Marcus values loyalty. But my patience has limits. He turned back to me, and his expression shifted to something almost gentle. Almost. Here's what's going to happen, Zara. May I call you Zara? We're going to wait here. Very soon, Marcus will figure out where you are. He'll come with his men, guns blazing, ready to tear down walls. And when he does, my people will be waiting. We'll kill him, kill everyone loyal to him, and I'll take what should have been mine from the start. And us. I asked, though I already knew. You'll die too. Collateral damage. But don't worry, it'll be quick. I'm not a monster. He said it like he believed it. Like murder was just business, and business wasn't personal. My mind raced. There had to be a way out. Had to be something I could do. But I was tied to a chair in a warehouse with armed men outside, and my only ally was zip-tied across from me, bleeding. Then my phone buzzed in Luciano's pocket. He pulled it out, read the screen, smiled. Your prince is calling. Should we answer? He put it on speaker. Zara. Marcus's voice was ragged. Desperate. If you can hear me, I'm coming. I'm going to fix this. Just hold on. She's alive, Dante, Luciano said pleasantly.
For now.
But here's the thing. You come alone, unarmed, and maybe I let her walk out. You bring your army, and I send her back to you in pieces. Your choice. Silence on the other end. Then, where? Luciano gave the address. You have 1 hour. After that, I start removing fingers. He hung up. Dominic made a sound like a wounded animal. He's going to get himself killed. Of course he is. Love makes men stupid. Luciano stood, straightened his tie. I'll give you two some privacy. Last chance to make peace with whatever God you believe in. He left, and the warehouse fell into terrible quiet except for our breathing. Zara, Dominic said softly, listen to me very carefully. Marcus is going to come through that door ready to die for you. That's who he is. But you need to understand something. If he dies, everyone who depends on him, everyone under his protection, they're exposed. Families.
Kids.
Good people who got caught in bad situations. What are you saying? I'm saying when the moment comes, when you have a choice between saving him or saving yourself, you save him. You hear me? Even if it costs you everything. Tears burned my eyes. I can't. You can. Because that's what love is. Not the pretty parts they show in movies. The ugly parts. The sacrifice. The putting someone else's survival above your own. He coughed, winced. I've known Marcus since we were kids. I've seen him build himself from nothing. Seen him try to be better than what the world demanded. And I've never seen him happy until you. So, if one of us walks out of here, it needs to be him. What about you? He smiled, bloody teeth and all. I made my choices a long time ago. I'm at peace with them. Footsteps outside. Multiple men. I could hear them taking positions, loading weapons. This was really happening. Marcus was walking into a trap, and I was the bait, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Unless... Dominic, I whispered. These zip ties, can you reach my hands? He tried.
Couldn't.
Why? My jacket pocket. There's a small knife. For opening boxes at the restaurant. If I can. The warehouse door exploded inward. Marcus stood in the entrance, alone, hands raised, and my heart broke at the sight of him. He looked destroyed. Hair disheveled, shirt untucked, eyes wild with fear. This man who commanded respect through silence was unraveling. "I'm here," he said. "Let her go." Luciano's men surrounded him, weapons trained. 8 of them, maybe more in the shadows. Luciano appeared from a side office, clapping slowly. The great Marcus Dante, unarmed,
Defeated.
all for a waitress. He walked up to Marcus, studying him. "My sister loved you, you know. Really loved you. And you got her killed because you couldn't leave the life.
Couldn't walk away.
So now you'll know what it feels like to lose someone you can't live without." He pulled out a gun, aimed it at my head. Marcus moved faster than thought, tackled Luciano, and chaos erupted. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. I screamed, but the bullet hit metal somewhere behind me. Marcus and Luciano went down in a tangle of limbs, fighting for the weapon. Then the warehouse erupted with movement, men pouring in from everywhere, not Luciano's men, Marcus's crew, and I realized he'd never planned to come alone. The firefight was brutal and fast. I couldn't see everything with my chair facing the wrong direction, but I heard it. Shouting. More gunshots. Bodies hitting concrete. Someone cut Dominic free and he was up, moving despite his injuries, barking orders. Then strong hands were on my zip ties, cutting them away. I turned and saw Marcus, blood on his shirt, but not his blood, eyes frantic. "Are you hurt?"
No.
"I'm Marcus, behind you." He spun just as one of Luciano's men raised a gun. Marcus didn't hesitate. 2 shots. Center mass. The man dropped. And I realized I'd just watched Marcus kill someone 6 feet away from me. Watched him end a life as easily as breathing. This was his world. This was who he really was beneath the gentle hands and soft words. "We need to move," he said, pulling me up. "Can you walk?" I nodded, numb. He kept me close, body between me and the chaos, moving us toward a side exit. Outside, more cars were arriving.
His people.
The ones Luciano hadn't anticipated. Marcus had planned this. Used himself as bait to draw everyone out. We made it to an SUV. Dominic was already inside, being treated by someone with medical training. Marcus pushed me in, climbed in after, and we were moving before the door fully closed. "The warehouse," Marcus said into his phone. "Burn it. All of it. No evidence." He hung up, looked at me, and I saw something in his face I'd never seen before.
Shame.
"I'm sorry you had to see that. You killed people." "I did."
No excuses. No justifications.
"Just truth." "How many times have you done that?" "More than I can remember. Less than I deserve." He reached for my hand, but stopped himself. "You should hate me. You should run as far from me as possible." I was shaking. From adrenaline, from fear, from the realization that I'd fallen for a man who could switch from gentle to lethal in seconds. But I was also alive. Dominic was alive. And the alternative had been watching them die. "What happens to Luciano?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "He won't bother you again. You're going to kill him. I'm going to make sure he can never threaten what's mine again." There's a difference. But was there? In his world. Weren't they the same thing? We drove in silence to a safe house in Westchester. Big property, high walls, guards at every entrance. Inside, it looked like a normal home. Too normal. Like someone's staging of what normal should be. Marcus led me to a bedroom. "You should rest. We'll have a doctor check you out in the morning. I don't want to be alone."
He stopped. Turned.
"Zara. I almost died tonight. You almost died. Dominic almost died. And I know I should be terrified of you right now. I know I should walk away. But I'm more scared of losing you than I am of what you're capable of." My voice broke. Is that crazy? Am I crazy? He crossed the distance between us in 2 steps, pulled me into his arms, and held on like I was the only thing keeping him grounded. I felt him shaking. This man who'd just orchestrated a raid, who'd killed without hesitation, was shaking in my arms. "I tried to protect you from this," he whispered into my hair. I tried to keep you separate from my world, but I was selfish. I wanted you too much, and it almost got you killed. But it didn't. This time. But there'll be others, Zara. There are always others. Men who see you as a weakness to exploit, who'll use you to hurt me. And I can't watch you die. I can't bury another person I love. My breath caught. You love me? He pulled back enough to look at me, and his eyes were wet. From the moment you dropped that glass and looked at me like I was just a man, like I could be something other than what everyone expects.
So yes.
I love you, and that's why you need to leave. Tonight. Tomorrow. I'll set you up anywhere you want. New identity. New life. But you can't stay in my world. What if I want to stay? Then you're not thinking clearly. Maybe. Or maybe I'm thinking clearly for the first time in my life. I took his face in my hands, made him look at me. I'm not your dead wife, Marcus. I'm not asking you to choose between love and survival. I'm asking you to let me make my own choice. And I choose you, even knowing what that means. You'll regret it, probably. But it'll be my regret, not yours. He kissed me then, desperate and rough and filled with all the fear he couldn't voice. And I kissed him back, choosing this, choosing him, choosing whatever came next. We stayed in the safe house for a week. During that time, I learned things about Marcus I hadn't wanted to know. That he owned legitimate businesses but laundered money through them. That he had judges and cops on his payroll. That his empire was built on fear and violence and calculations I couldn't follow. But I also saw him with his people. The single mothers he employed and protected. The kids whose college he funded. The neighborhood he'd grown up in, where he made sure everyone had enough. He wasn't just a monster.
He was complicated.
Trying to survive in a world that punished softness. On the 7th day, he came to me with news. It's done. Luciano's organization is dismantled. His remaining people have been absorbed or encouraged to retire. You're safe. What happened to him? Marcus's expression was unreadable. He's alive. Broken but alive. I gave him a choice. Leave the country and never return, or die. He chose wisely. You let him live. Because you asked me not to become more of a monster than necessary. Because I'm trying to be the man you see when you look at me.
He sat beside me.
I spoke to my lawyer. There's paperwork. If you sign it, you'll be financially protected. Separate accounts. Your name nowhere near my businesses. If something happens to me, you're insulated. You're planning for your death. I'm planning for reality. Men like me don't retire, Zara. We die or we disappear. And I'd rather you have options than obligations. It was the most romantic and depressing thing anyone had ever said to me. But 2 days after we returned to the city, everything changed again. I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered, a woman's voice said, "Miss Coleman, my name is Detective Sarah Morrison. I need to speak with you about Marcus Dante. It's urgent." The coffee shop was crowded enough to feel safe, but quiet enough to hear clearly. Detective Morrison looked like she'd missed sleep for days. Mid-30s, sharp eyes, the kind of determination that probably made her excellent at her job and terrible at relationships. "I'll be direct," she said. "We've been building a case against Marcus Dante for 3 years. Money laundering, racketeering, conspiracy. We're close to indictment. And you're our way in." My stomach dropped. I don't know anything about his business. You don't need to. You just need to get us into his properties. Plant recording devices. We have warrants. We just need access. She leaned forward. "I know he's been good to you. I know you care about him. But he's dangerous, Miss Coleman. The people around him don't usually survive long. I'm not helping you. Even if I tell you his consigliere, Dominic Russo, is the one who contacted us, that he's been feeding us information for 6 months." The world tilted. "You're lying." She slid a folder across the table. Inside were photos. Dominic meeting with people in suits. Dominic at FBI offices.
Dominique wearing a white.
Time-stamped. Dated. Real. He approached us last year. said he wanted out but couldn't leave Marcus unprotected. So he made a deal. Help us build a clean case, testify, and in exchange, we'd offer Marcus a way out. Witness protection. New life. No prison time if he cooperates. I felt sick. Marcus would never agree to that. Dominic thinks he will. If the alternative is you going to prison as an accomplice. See, that's the thing about loving someone in this life. You become legally liable for their choices. Those debts Marcus paid, that makes you part of a money laundering scheme. The safe house? Conspiracy. You're already implicated, Miss Coleman. You just don't know it yet. This is blackmail. This is reality. And I'm offering you a choice. Help us, and we'll protect you. Refuse, and when we take Marcus down, you go down with him. She stood up. You have 48 hours to decide. After that, the warrants go through, and we move with or without you. She left me sitting there, everything I thought I knew crumbling like sand. I didn't tell Marcus. Not that night when he held me, not the next morning when we had breakfast like normal people. But he knew something was wrong. He always knew. Talk to me, he said, coffee cup halfway to his mouth. It's nothing, Zara. I broke. Told him everything. Watched his face go from concern to rage to something worse. Resignation. Dominic. He said the name like a death sentence. Pulled out his phone, made a call. Conference room. 1 hour. All department heads.
No exceptions.
He hung up. Looked at me with tired eyes. I need to handle this. Stay here. Don't leave the apartment. Don't answer the door for anyone. Marcus, what are you going to do? What I should have done a long time ago. Face the truth. He left, and I was alone with my fear. An hour passed. Then 2.
My phone rang. Dominic.
I almost didn't answer. But curiosity and anger won.
Why?
Because I love him like a brother, Dominic said, voice rough. And brothers don't let brothers destroy themselves. This life was killing him, Zara. Before you, he was a ghost. After his wife died, he stopped being human. Started making choices that would have gotten everyone killed eventually. So you betrayed him? I gave him an exit. A chance to disappear with you. Start over somewhere nobody knows his name. But he has to choose it. And he won't unless he believes there's no other option. Dominic paused. The feds are moving tonight. They have enough to arrest him even without your cooperation. But if he runs, if he leaves now, they'll chase him forever. The only way he gets free is if he cooperates. Testifies against the real monsters. Uses his knowledge to take down the people who make men like him necessary. He'll never forgive you. I know. But he'll be alive. And so will you. And maybe that's enough. The call ended. I sat there, mind racing. Everything was falling apart. The life we'd been building, the hope we'd found, all of it was crashing down because the world doesn't let men like Marcus Dante just walk away. Unless. I grabbed my phone, called Detective Morrison. I'll do it. I'll help you. But I have conditions. When Marcus came home that night, I was waiting. He looked hollowed out. Older somehow. I didn't kill him, he said quietly.
Dominic. I wanted to. Part of me still wants to.
But he's right. I've been building toward this for years. Making enemies I can't defeat. And bringing you into it was the most selfish thing I've ever done. So what now? He knelt in front of me, took my hands. There's a plane leaving for Italy tomorrow morning. New identities. New life. We disappear.
Together.
Leave all of this behind.
And Dominic?
Your people? Dominic made his choice. My people will be absorbed by others, or they'll adapt. But I'm done, Zara. I'm done pretending I can be both the man you need and the man this world demands. It was everything I'd wanted to hear. The fairy tale ending. Run away together and forget the past. But fairy tales aren't real. And running doesn't fix what's broken. I can't go with you, I whispered. His face crumpled. What? The feds are coming tonight. They have enough to arrest you. But they offered a deal. You testify, help them take down the real operations, and they'll give you immunity. Protection. A real chance at a clean life. And you believe them? I believe it's the only option where we both survive. I squeezed his hands. I love you, Marcus. But I won't run forever. Won't spend my life looking over my shoulder. You taught me that I matter, that I deserve more than just survival. So, I'm asking you to fight for that. Not with guns, with truth. He was quiet for a long time. Then, you set this up. With Dominic. After Morrison approached me, I called her back and told her I'd help if she guaranteed your safety. Real safety. Not prison. Not witness protection that leaves you vulnerable. A deal that actually gives you a future. I could lose everything. Or you could gain everything that actually matters. The next morning, federal agents arrested Marcus Dante in his penthouse. He didn't fight, didn't run, just looked at me as they led him away and said, "Thank you for seeing something worth saving." The trial lasted 4 months. Marcus testified against operations that spanned 3 states, gave up names, locations, evidence, watched his empire crumble and didn't flinch. And when it was over, when the judge accepted his cooperation and granted immunity, he walked out of that courthouse a free man. Sort of. Because freedom is complicated when you've spent your life being someone else. Marcus Dante died on paper 6 months after the trial ended. In his place, a man named Isaiah Bennett emerged. No criminal record. No connections to organized crime. Just a guy who'd made some money in investments and wanted to start fresh. I became Zara Bennett. We moved to Portland. Far from New York. Far from everything that had almost destroyed us. He bought a small restaurant. Not La Scala Rosa Glamorous, just a neighborhood place that served good food and didn't ask questions about anyone's past. Watching him learn to be normal was strange. He'd wake up sometimes in the middle of the night, reaching for a gun that wasn't there. He'd tense when police cars drove by. He'd see someone who looked familiar and his whole body would shift into combat mode before remembering he didn't have to be that person anymore. But slowly, carefully, he learned. Learned to smile at customers. Learned to handle problems with conversations instead of threats. Learned that power could be quiet, could be building something instead of controlling everything. I went back to school. Got my degree in social work. Started working with women escaping domestic violence, using everything I'd learned about survival to help others find their way out. We built a life. Small. Quiet. The kind of life neither of us thought we'd ever have. But the past doesn't stay buried forever. It was a Tuesday afternoon, slow lunch shift at the restaurant when he walked in. 30-something black man, well-dressed, watchful eyes. He ordered coffee, sat at the corner booth, and waited for Marcus to notice him. When Marcus did, I watched recognition and fear flash across his face. "Isaiah," I said quietly, using his new name. "Who is that?" "Someone from before." He wiped his hands on his apron, walked over to the booth. They spoke too quietly for me to hear. Then Marcus came back, pale. "What's wrong?" "That's Dominic's son, Elijah. He's been looking for me."
My heart sank.
"What does he want?"
To talk.
"He says he has information I need to hear." That evening, after the restaurant closed, Elijah came back. Marcus let him in, and we sat at one of the tables while he told us a story that made my blood run cold. "My father's dead," Elijah said, voice steady, but eyes showing pain. 3 months ago. They made it look like an accident. Car crash. But I know better. I've been going through his things, trying to understand why he did what he did. And I found files. Documentation of everything he gave to the feds. But also evidence he kept as insurance. "Evidence of what?" Marcus asked. "That some of the people you testified against, the ones you thought were arrested and prosecuted, weren't. That certain FBI agents took bribes. Let major players escape in exchange for taking down their competition. You didn't dismantle the network, Mr. Dante. You reorganized it." Marcus's face went white. "That's impossible. Detective Morrison is dead too."
Officially a suicide.
"But I found correspondence between her and my father. She'd figured it out, was going to expose the corruption, and now she's gone." Elijah pushed a flash drive across the table. This is everything he saved.
Names. Dates.
Proof that you're still in danger. That they only granted you immunity so they could control the fallout. The moment you became inconvenient, they planned to eliminate you. I felt like the floor had disappeared. So, we're not safe. We were never safe. Not while these people think you know too much. But my father left instructions. A way to actually end this. Elijah looked at Marcus. He said to tell you that real justice isn't about revenge. It's about making sure no one else has to live the way you did. And if you're willing to fight one more time, not with violence but with truth, he believed you could expose the whole system. Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he looked at me. This is your choice too. We can disappear again. Take new names.
Run.
Or we can stay and fight. But if we fight, we're putting ourselves back in danger. I thought about the women I worked with, about people trapped in systems designed to keep them powerless, about how hiding didn't change anything for anyone except us. What did you tell me once? That quiet justice doesn't have to roar. He smiled, small and sad. I did say that. Then let's be quiet justice. One more time. Over the next 3 months, we worked with Elijah and a team of investigative journalists, released the files publicly, exposed the corruption, watched as federal agents were arrested, as major crime figures were actually prosecuted, as the system we'd trusted revealed itself to be just as broken as we'd feared. It was dangerous. We had security, changed locations constantly, lived waiting for someone to decide we knew too much.
But we also watched change happen. Real change.
The kind that came from refusing to let fear win. When it was over, when the last arrest was made and the last testimony was given, we went back to Portland. Back to our small restaurant and our small life. But it felt different now. Earned. Marcus found me in the kitchen one evening after close, washing dishes because our dishwasher had called in sick. I've been thinking, he said, taking a towel to dry. About starting a foundation. Using money I have hidden away that nobody knows about. Helping people get out of situations like ours. Giving them real options. I stopped washing, looked at him. You do that. I spent my whole life taking from people. Maybe it's time I gave something back. He set down the towel, pulled me close. You made me believe I could be more than what I was. So let me prove it. Let me try to be the man you saw when everyone else saw a monster. We started small. A scholarship fund for kids from rough neighborhoods. Then a legal fund for people wrongly caught up in the system. Then safe houses for families escaping violence. All funded quietly, no names attached, just help when people needed it most. One day, a young woman came into the restaurant. She looked like I had years ago. Scared, tired, carrying weight she was too young to hold. She ordered coffee she probably couldn't afford and sat in the corner trying not to cry. Marcus saw her, walked over, didn't offer money or advice or pity, just said, "Food's on the house today, and if you need help we know people."
No judgment.
No strings. She looked up at him, and I saw the moment she decided to trust. To believe that maybe someone saw her as more than a problem or a victim. After she left, I wrapped my arms around Marcus from behind. You did good. We did good. He turned, kissed my forehead like he had that first night. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for being worth believing in. But life is never quite that simple. Because 3 days later, a letter arrived at the restaurant. No return address. Inside was a single white rose and a note. The past never stays dead. See you soon. The white rose sat on our kitchen counter like a threat. Marcus stared at it, jaw tight, and I knew he was running through every enemy, every loose end, every person who might want revenge. We handled this, I said, though my voice shook. We exposed everyone. They're all in prison or dead or smart enough to wait. He picked up the rose, examining it. This isn't random, Zara. Someone's sending a message. Someone who knows who we really are. The next week, nothing happened. No more letters.
No threats.
Just the weight of waiting. Marcus hired private security again, something we'd stopped doing months ago.
We varied our routes, checked under our car before driving,
Lived like we had in the beginning, when every shadow held danger. Then on Thursday evening, exactly 3 months after the rose arrived, he came in. Older man, 70s maybe. Walked with a cane, but his eyes were sharp. He ordered the grilled sea bass, no sides, black coffee. Marcus's old order.
I was working the floor that night.
When I approached his table, he looked up and smiled.
Kind.
Grandfatherly. You must be Zara. You're even more beautiful than the photo suggested. My blood went cold. Who are you? Someone who's been watching you both.
Studying.
Waiting to see if Marcus Dante really changed, or if he was just hiding. He gestured to the empty chair.
Seat. Please.
I'm not here to hurt you. Marcus appeared beside me, moving between us like a shield. Say what you came to say and leave. The old man laughed softly, still protective.
Good.
That's good. He reached into his jacket slowly and pulled out a folder. Set it on the table. My name is Vincent Caruso. 20 years ago, your father worked for me. Before he died, before you had to build yourself from nothing.
He was a good man.
Tried to keep his family out of the life. But the life doesn't let people go, does it? Marcus's face showed nothing, but I felt him trembling. My father's been dead for 30 years.
28. And yes, he's dead.
But what he started, what he tried to protect you from, it never went away. I've spent decades dismantling the system that killed him, piece by piece. And when I heard Marcus Dante was testifying, exposing corruption, actually trying to change things, I realized his son had become what Antonio always hoped for. Vincent pushed the folder forward. This contains information on the last 3 operations your father tried to stop. The ones that got him killed. They're still running. Still destroying families. And I'm too old to finish this fight. But you're not. Marcus didn't touch the folder. I'm done with that life. I'm building something different. I know. That's why I'm asking. Because this isn't about revenge or power or any of the things that motivated you before. It's about actually finishing what your father started. Actually protecting the people these organizations prey on. Vincent stood up slowly, leaning on his cane. The rose was a test. To see if you'd run, or if you'd stand your ground. You passed. But this, he tapped the folder. This is the real choice. Walk away and live your quiet life. Or take one last job. Not as Marcus Dante the criminal. As Isaiah Bennett, the man who understands both worlds and knows how to navigate them. He left cash on the table for his meal and walked out. Marcus and I stood there in the empty restaurant, staring at the folder like it might explode. We don't have to open it, I said. But we will. He picked it up, heavy with potential and danger, and the weight of choices made by people long dead. Because you were right. Real change doesn't come from hiding. It comes from people brave enough to face what's broken and refuse to look away.
We opened the folder that night.
Inside were details of human trafficking rings, drug operations using kids as mules, and systems designed to keep people trapped in cycles of poverty and violence. Everything his father had died trying to expose. Everything that still existed because good people decided their safety mattered more than justice. If we do this, Marcus said quietly, it's not like before. No violence. No shortcuts. We build cases. We work with actual law enforcement, the ones who aren't corrupt. We do it right. And if it takes years, then it takes years. He looked at me, and his eyes held something I'd never seen before. Purpose. Real purpose. My father tried to protect me from this world. But maybe the best way to honor him isn't to hide from it. Maybe it's to actually fix it. We spent the next 2 years working with Vincent's network, former agents, reformed criminals, people who'd lost loved ones to the system. We documented. We investigated. We built airtight cases and handed them to prosecutors we'd carefully vetted. And slowly, operation by operation, we dismantled what his father had fought against. It was hard, dangerous. There were threats, attempts on our lives. Nights when we questioned if any of it mattered. but we saw results. Families reunited. Kids pulled out of exploitation. Communities that had been bleeding for decades finally finding help. And through it all, we kept the restaurant. Kept our small life in Portland. Because that's what made it bearable, knowing we had something to come back to. Something normal and human and good. 5 years after Vincent walked into our restaurant, we got word the last operation had been shut down. The final arrest was made. Marcus's father's work was finally complete. That night, we closed the restaurant early, sat in the empty dining room with a bottle of wine, and just breathed. "It's over," I said. "This part is." Marcus smiled, tired but real. But there's always more work, always more people who need help. So we keep going. We keep going. He raised his glass. To quiet justice. To second chances. To believing people can change. We clinked glasses, and I thought about how far we'd come. From a scared waitress and a lonely crime boss to people who'd actually made a difference. It wasn't a fairy tale. We weren't perfect, but we were real. And maybe that was better. The restaurant reopened the next day. Same corner booth. Same menu. But different people sitting in those chairs. People who'd learned that power isn't about control. It's about using whatever influence you have to lift others up. Sometimes, late at night when the last customer left and we were cleaning up, Marcus would find me and just hold me. No words. Just presence. Two people who'd survived the worst and chosen each other anyway. And every Thursday, without fail, he'd leave a white rose on table 7. Not as a threat anymore, but as a promise. That we remembered where we came from. That we wouldn't forget the people still trapped in the darkness we'd escaped. That justice doesn't always look like victory parades and Hollywood endings. Sometimes it looks like a small restaurant in Portland, serving good food to people who need a safe place to exist. Sometimes it looks like quiet work that nobody notices until suddenly, inexplicably, things get better. One Thursday evening, a young woman walked in. She couldn't have been more than 22. She had that look, the one I recognized instantly. Head down, shoulders hunched, moving through the world like she was apologizing for taking up space. She sat at table 7. Marcus saw her too. We exchanged a glance across the dining room, an entire conversation happening in silence. He nodded slightly. My turn. I approached her table with a menu and a genuine smile. First time here? She looked up, startled that someone had actually seen her.
Yeah.
I heard this was a good place. Safe. Safe. That word carried so much weight. It is, I said softly. The food's good, the people are kind, and nobody here judges your story. I set down the menu. Order anything you want. It's on the house tonight. Her eyes filled with tears. I can't pay you back. Nobody's asking you to. I sat down across from her, something I never did with regular customers. But if you need help, real help, not just a meal, there are people I can connect you with. Resources. Options. No strings attached.
She broke then.
Told me about her boyfriend who'd started sweet and turned cruel. About the apartment she couldn't escape because he controlled all the money. About the fear that had become so normal she'd forgotten what safety felt like. By the time she finished talking, Marcus had joined us. He didn't say much, just listened. Then he excused himself, made some calls, and within 2 hours, we'd arranged emergency housing, legal assistance, and a job interview at a business owned by someone in Vincent's network. As she left that night, she hugged me tight and whispered, "Thank you for seeing me." And I realized that's what this whole thing had always been about. Being seen. Seeing others. Refusing to let people become invisible just because the world found them inconvenient. The years continued. We grew older. The restaurant became a neighborhood fixture. Marcus's hair started graying at the temples. My hands developed the calluses of someone who'd worked honest jobs for decades. We were normal. Beautifully, impossibly normal. But we never forgot where we came from. We funded scholarships in Dominic's name. Built community centers in Marcus's old neighborhood. Created programs that gave people alternatives to the life that had almost destroyed us both. And we did it all quietly, anonymously, because the point wasn't recognition. The point was impact. On our 10th anniversary of leaving New York, Vincent passed away. He was 91, died peacefully in his sleep, and left everything he had to the foundation we'd built. Millions of dollars, properties, connections, all of it dedicated to the work we'd started together. His funeral was small, just family and a few people who understood what he'd really been. At the service, his granddaughter approached Marcus. "He told me once that you reminded him of his son," she said. "That watching you choose redemption over revenge gave him hope that maybe the cycle could actually break." Marcus nodded, couldn't speak, just held my hand tighter. We buried Vincent next to his wife in a cemetery in Brooklyn, and on the way back to Portland, Marcus was quiet, thinking, processing. Finally, he said, "I want to write a book."
About what?
About all of it. The life, the choices, the way out. Not glorifying it, not making excuses, just honest. So maybe some kid who thinks violence is the only way sees that there are alternatives, that you can survive the worst and still become someone decent. He wrote it over the next 3 years. Every morning before the restaurant opened, he'd sit at table 7 with coffee and a laptop and bleed his story onto pages. The violence, the fear, the moment he met me, the decision to testify, the work we'd done since. He changed names, protected people, but he told the truth. The ugly, complicated, messy truth about what happens when broken people try to heal in a world designed to keep them broken. The book published under Isaiah Bennett's name. It didn't become a bestseller, didn't make us famous, but it reached the people it needed to reach. We got letters from former gang members who'd read it in prison and decided to try something different. From kids in rough neighborhoods who saw a path that didn't end in death or jail. From women who recognized their own survival stories in mine. And that was enough. More than enough. Now, as I stand here, decades later, looking at the restaurant we built and the life we carved from ruins, I understand something I didn't when I was that scared 26-year-old waitress. Justice isn't just about punishing the guilty. It's about creating space for people to become more than their worst moments. It's about believing change is possible even when every logical part of your brain says it isn't. Marcus comes up behind me, wraps his arms around my waist, and we watch the sunset through the restaurant windows. He's 73 now. I'm 69. Our bodies ache in ways they didn't when we were young. But we're here, together, still choosing each other, still choosing the work. "No regrets?" he asks softly. "Not one," I answer. "You? Just that I didn't find you sooner." He kisses the top of my head. "But I'll take the time we got. Every second of it. The restaurant will close eventually. Maybe when we're gone. Maybe before. But the foundation will continue. The work will continue. Because that's the thing about real change. It doesn't depend on any one person. It depends on building systems that outlast you. On training others to carry the work forward. On believing that the world can be better than what was handed to you. Tomorrow, a new crop of young people will start internships at the foundation. Kids from Brooklyn and Portland and everywhere in between. Kids who remind me of Marcus at 16, of me at 26. Kids who think they're destined for one path because that's all they've ever seen. And we'll show them something different. Not a fairy tale. Not an easy road. Just proof that people can change. That the cycle can break. That quiet justice is still justice. The white rose sits in a vase on table 7.
Fresh.
Always fresh. A reminder of where we've been and who we've become. And if you're watching this, if you're someone who feels trapped or invisible or like your story has already been written, I need you to hear this. You are not your worst moment. You are not what the world told you to be. You have the power to choose differently. To be better. To build something worth protecting. It won't be easy. Nothing worth doing ever is. But it's possible. I know because I lived it. We lived it. And if we could find our way from darkness to light, so can you. So here's what I'm asking. If this story touched you, if it made you think about second chances and quiet justice and the power of being truly seen, leave a white rose emoji in the comments. Share this with someone who needs to hear that change is possible. And most importantly, subscribe and turn on notifications because next week we're bringing you another story of survival, transformation, and the beautiful, complicated work of becoming better than you were yesterday. Your story isn't over. It's just beginning. And we'll be here, sharing these truths, building this community, reminding each other that we're not alone in the fight to be more than what broke us. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing that people, all people, deserve the chance to heal. Now go out there and be someone's quiet justice. Be the person who sees, who helps, who believes. Because that's how we change the world. One person, one choice, one act of courage at a time. The restaurant lights flicker off. Tomorrow they'll turn back on. And the work continues. This is Zara Bennett, reminding you that when a person finally finds peace, they never forget where they found it. And sometimes, the most revolutionary thing you can do is refuse to let pain have the last word.
Subscribe. Share.
And remember, your story matters. Every single word of it. Until next time, keep choosing hope.
Keep choosing change.
Keep choosing each other. Because that's how we win.